Chapter 4. Fleeting Happiness. Someone says, "Hey!" and puts a hand on Yu's shoulder, startling him, and prompting him to react violently. Yu freaks out and turns around. Turns out it's one of Yu's classmates, Kaneda Shinichi. Yu's reaction scared him. He knows Yu's name and asks him what he's doing here. Yu doesn't know or remember who he is, however. He says that Yu doesn't look like the sort of person who would hang out at an arcade at night. Shin notices the bruises and blood on his hand. He assumes that some thugs got to him. He talks about how this place has been dangerous lately due to the thug hunter rumors. He says that they would make a target out of him in no time, though he can't imagine him fighting with them. He notices Yu's getting anxious and sweating, prompting him to say, chill out. And that he was just kidding, there's no need to be so scared. Someone says, "Hey, Shin!" It's Takeda-san, who appears to at least be connected to the thugs, if he isn't one himself, who asks who Yu is. Yu is anxious. Shin says he's a friend from school and a scaredy cat, so please don't mess with him. Takeda says, "Who do you think you're talking to?" He doesn't go for small fry and walks off. As Shin waves goodbye to him and talks a bit about Takeda being not as scary as he looks, Yu says a very sincere thank you to Shin and that he saved him. Shin says no prob and finds it funny how Yu is acting like an innocent daughter from an evil village he just saved. Shin goes on to say that he's pretty well networked around here. Stick with him and he'll be fine, as well as to let him know if he has any problems. This is an interesting moment, not only because we get an introduction to Shin, but because of the reversal of what tends to happen later on. Shin saving Yu due to his people skills. Shin becomes a very important person in the story, despite his lack of physical strength and fighting skills. His personality is quite opposite to Yu's, but it is their natural strengths that end up making them such good friends and a good team. Shin is outgoing, caring, and understanding of people. It could be said that he becomes a hero of a sort in his own right due to his character. The next day at school, as Yu is leaving, he hears someone say, "Hey, Yu!" It's Shin, who proceeds to make a "you joke. Yu thinks it's bad, but I personally thought it was funny. He asks Yu to call him by his first name and invites him to hang out at the arcade. He adds that if he's with him, he won't get picked on. Yu perks up and says okay. It was Yu's first time being invited by a friend after school. The town may be dangerous, but if he's not alone, he can stay there. We see Shin being amazed at Yu's skill in Tetris. This is the only game he plays at the arcade, since he has little money, so he had no choice but to keep playing the one he could spend most time on. This detail shows something about his character that is important later on. Yu realizes that he may have been too much on edge. If he acts normally, then maybe nothing will happen to him. Shin suggests they play a guitar arcade game. Yu doesn't know how to play, so Shin says to watch him shred. He doesn't end up shredding it. As Shin says, "Let's go," Aizawa Mai happens to be walking there with her friends and sees them. Surprised, she goes up to him, saying his name and Shin. Shin is annoyed by being mentioned as an afterthought. Mai remarks that it's so rare to see Yu with someone else. Yu can't remember her name, leading to a comedic moment. Mai is annoyed, gets up in his face and tells him to at least remember her name. The three girls came to play DDR, Dance Dance Revolution. Mai asks if they want to join them. Shin responds for Yu quickly, shouting, "Hell yeah!" Watching high school girls play DDR is a must, says Shin to Yu. as Mai gets on the dance pad and starts dancing due to her short skirt. Her panties are showing as she dances. Shin advises you to lower his head and that this is the reason. Is he yelling or whispering? Yu says, "Whoa," and seems to be turning red. Due to either hearing Shin or a woman's sixth sense, Mai covers herself, yelling to Shin that he just came to look at her underwear. Shin reacts in an emotional, defensive way, then implicates that Yu was watching too. Yu starts to protest, which prompts Shin to say, "Come on, you jerk! Don't betray me here!" Seems to be a playfulness about it, because then Shin transitions into saying, "Just watch. I'm gonna light this dance floor on fire." This prompts everyone to laugh. Mai calls to Yu, saying, "So you do smile after all. You look better here, you know. Way better than when you're in school." Kamishiro Yu feels happy and accepted, thinking, at this point, I thought the streets had accepted me. That's how I really felt. There's a lot going on in this part. Yu's comment about it being his first time being invited like that after school by a friend means that if he had any friends before, that they must not have been good friends. Yu realizes that if he's not alone, he can stay here or be safe. I believe Yu is not the most adventurous person, since he seems to only play one game and focus on only the games he's good at, though that's also because he has little money. Sexual humor is something that is in many Japanese media and is pretty frequent. I personally like it if it's playful and light, but even I have my limits. Luckily for us, this is, I believe, the only time that Holyland does this outright. It shows something of Shin's character, as well as Mai. Mai is clearly not shy or insecure. I'm kind of amazed at Shin's ability to take the situation of getting caught and turn it into having a fun time. Mai notices Yu being with a friend and having fun. Yu is feeling like he has a place here. He feels like the streets, as he calls them, have accepted him. Not too far from there, we see Masaki and one of his friends. The friend mentions seeing his sister with some boys. He also mentions that the thugs have gone to the judo club for help. They are getting help from a guy named Iwado. Aizawa Masaki says that judo club is something completely different from the thugs who think they are good at fighting. Judo on the streets is dangerous. We get a shot of Iwado, then a close-up of the back of him. A shady-looking guy says he's been waiting, and let's have some fun tonight. This chapter is all about the calm before the storm. In one chapter, Yu meets a new friend and hangs out with him, as well as Mai and her friends. It is as if he's found his place, the place he belongs, his Holyland. However, as we find out later, it doesn't last long. It's as if to say all he needed was friends or good friends, which is true, but not completely true. Chapter 5. Judo. We start by hearing the names of the people or thugs that the thug hunter has taken out. It is the leader of the thugs, Yoshito, who is talking to Iwado, who is a practitioner of judo. We hear him explaining who the thug hunter is from his perspective, making him seem like the aggressor. Iwado is eating and seems to be not fully interested or invested in this struggle. Yoshito says he's counting on him since they go way back. However, one of the thugs cuts in outrage that they're asking help of outsiders. He seems to believe that he's stronger than Iwado, and that judo is weak. Yoshito tries to put him in his place, but the thug seems adamant to prove himself. Iwado dislikes this infighting and says he'll leave if they're just going to fight amongst themselves. Yoshito apologizes to him, saying he got carried away keeping his juniors in line. The thug still persists, prompting Yoshito to ask Iwado to help him understand. This, of course, means proving his strength to the thug. Iwado agrees if he will wipe away his losses from the month before the last month, suggesting that he has a lot of debt. Yoshido agrees. The thug yells out, "I practiced karate when I was a kid. All you need to do is hit judo fighters first. Then they're finished." He comes at Iwado using a kick. Meanwhile, with Masaki and his gang, one of his friends asks why judo would mean trouble. He thinks that karate or boxing would be more dangerous. Masaki says that people think that because they watch competitive sports, but in reality, judo's really dangerous. He briefly mentions Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but says that that's something totally different. No one would try something so risky like that on the street. He's referring to taking someone to the ground and doing ground grappling, which is what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specializes in. Masaki goes on to say that the streets aren't like a ring on TV that's made to be watched. On the streets, people wear clothes. This is what makes people easier to grab. In the rings, on TV, fighters are typically half naked, which halves the effectiveness of judo. Judo fighters also have plenty of stamina. They train hard every day. Perhaps a part of this is techniques that involve lifting and grabbing human beings, requiring a lot of strength. The typical thugs on the street are nothing compared to them. They can be tossed like nothing. During Masaki's explanation, we see that the exact thing he's talking about is happening during Iwado's fight with the thug. Masaki's explanation continues. And what do they get tossed into? This. Masaki stomps his foot on the ground, street. This isn't a soft floor or mat. It's concrete. This is scarier than getting into a judo stranglehold or joint lock. You'll be out in an instant. You won't even have a chance to apologize. We see the thug on the ground in immense pain, showcasing exactly what Masaki just explained. Iwado says he threw him too hard. He thinks he broke his shoulder blade, and maybe a rib or two. This causes Yoshido and the other thugs to be surprised and alarmed. It seems they didn't realize how powerful judo was either. Iwado asks Yoshido and his gang if he can take care of him. Yoshido says they will take care of things, but more importantly, he's counting on him to take care of things tonight. The first half of this chapter does exactly what the chapter title suggests. We get an introduction to judo. They use the same technique they used in the first chapter. The thug and Masaki's friends represent the common perception of judo, but not everything is how it appears. There's often more to things than meets the eye. We get a very logical explanation of the difference between the ring and the streets. We see what happens when people make assumptions based on common thought and perception. Popular opinion and consensus are not always right, and often don't consider everything. I myself learned things from this chapter. This chapter is not trying to put down karate, though, as we will see in later volumes. We never get much of any idea of how good the thug is. Practicing karate when you were a kid may mean you learned a few things, but oftentimes when not continuously practiced, you lose and forget many things. Again, I really like the use of the circumstances paired with Masaki's explanation to make the lesson feel really practical. It makes perfect sense, too, without overwhelming the reader with too much information. The use of the story and characters to explain things is genius, in my opinion. We then see Yoshito in a different place, waiting and saying that they are taking their sweet time. Another guy says that Tanaka and Kenji went out searching with 10 people. In the next panel, we see Iwado is with them, playing a game of mahjong. He doesn't seem to be that great at the game, though. I imagine this would explain his debt. All of a sudden, Yoshito gets a phone call. They found him at the arcade. If there was any confusion who they were talking about, we see Yu and Shin in the distance, making it pretty clear who they were trying to find. He says he's with a friend, but that Shin is a normal guy. Yoshito says, "Good work," but then Kenji takes the phone and yells, "Let me take this guy!" He wants to surround him and beat the beat the shit out of him. Kenji wants revenge by any means. He doesn't seem to see how that would make him look desperate and weak. Yoshido tells him to think carefully. What will happen if 10 of them were to beat up a normal-looking guy? It would make them look weak. He says that no one thinks he's weak or anything yet. Kenji says alright. Yoshido commands him to get the thug hunter out to the parking lot. If he resists, then forget everything and beat him up, even if they go to juvie. He finishes off by saying if he doesn't get serious about this, he'll be a laughingstock. Kenji responds with a confident, "Yes, sir!" This conversation shows Yoshido's character well. His ability to think things through, but also his ability to lead, argue, and persuade, as well as motivate people. While he could easily be painted as the bad guy, we do see a human side to him too. It takes a while to get a more complete picture of him, but we do get it eventually. I like what they do with him. Even if I don't like or agree with his actions, I find myself admiring or understanding him at times. Yoshido goes on about how he needs to make his gang respect him more. Iwado says it's all the same wherever you go. A thug beside him says he isn't like that. He will get his chance to prove that later. Yoshido says let's go, and they start heading off toward the parking lot. Iwado says that they should get this over with and go eat some ramen. Yoshido feels he's been eating all night and is in disbelief, laughing it off. We shift back to Yu and Shin, who are talking about Mai. Shin thinks there is something up with her, because she never talks to any other guy but Yu. Yu believes she was just saying hi and being nice. As they are talking, Yu notices the thugs coming towards him. Shin's back is turned to them, but he notices Yu's expression, asking him what's wrong. Kenji says, "Long time no see," as he approaches Yu. He came to thank him for the little sparring match they had. Shin is taken aback, asking who are they. He sees Takada-san, and asks him what this is all about all of a sudden. He asks Shin if Yu is his friend. Shin reiterates what he said earlier to him when he introduced him. Takada introduces Yu as the thug hunter. He's the one the thugs have been hunting. We get Yu's thoughts. He thinks he knew this was going to happen. Shin is in disbelief and voices this loudly. Tanaka goes on to say there's nothing he can do about this. These thugs owe Yu one. Shin asks Yu to tell him this is one sick joke. Yu is silent and doesn't protest. Yu somehow felt or knew somewhere deep in his heart that once he started this, there would be no stopping it. He has to keep moving forward. Until the end. This is the battle and climax that all these chapters have been building up to, and lasts the rest of this volume.